let me go ahead and just start, and I'm going to skip over our mission. And I'm just going to put a plug in to advocate for those of you that haven't had a chance yet to call your state representative or state senator. You'll be getting this PDF file, and just really encourage you to take action. And we're also collecting stories about people who have been waiting for services and, and need assistance in other ways. So we're continuing to compile those. And there's other webinars every Monday, except for holidays, we're here. And then there's a monthly webinar with Morris Sullivan, Alan Taberna, and then Carrie Mahoney schedules a bunch of webinars as well. And we always promote supporting the art, because it's really on fundraising and donations that we exist. So I want to start these slides. The next two slides are from the DDS Self-Direction Managers presentation. I thought they really, got to the point, which is opportunity to use DDS budget to purchase supports and services that address needs and goals, their needs and goals of the individuals served. And there's over 1,811 people enrolled, and there is a law that was passed in 2014 on self-determination and self-direction. And then I also wanted to show, actually, I meant to show you both. There's the participant-directed program, where people literally manage everything themselves, and through the Public Partnerships Corporation, there's what's called a participant-directed program. And then there's the agency with choice model. So I should have put in a third slide. Sorry, folks. That is a little more complicated. It's a co-employment model. Doesn't always work neatly, especially during this workforce crisis. So, but there's also, each agency has their own policies. So if it's co-employment, you're having to live with a particular agency's policies as well. So just put that out there. So let me introduce our panel, because I really want them to have most of the time here. First, I want to mention Linda Lawn. This is not their pictures, by the way. So you're going to get to see them on Zoom. But Linda will talk about Ryan's self-determination, self-direction experience, and her own as a parent, working on it. And he recently transitioned during COVID. So it wasn't fun. It was a tough transition for a lot of people during COVID. But then if you add self-direction on top of it, I'm sure it was, well, I know it was challenging. He's 23 years old and formally received DDS supports, right, Linda?
Correct.
And, yes. So I just think that's important to put it right out there up front. And then Cindy O'Connor is going to go next. And she has been directing a self-directed option for 12 years or so during Kevin's last years in special ed. She's been helping him. Well, she's been really implementing it, because though Kevin's enjoying it and growing through it, she has to play a strong role as a parent, coordinating and arranging it. He's 29 years old, and he uses agency with choice. I think you use, Ryan, and you use the PDP. Linda, am I right about that?
Yes, you are.
And I'm pretty sure that's what Will uses. Will is here. Will Fahey. Hey, Will, our self-ed advocate presenter with parent Liz. Hi, Liz. And then Will is 26 years old. And so he's been doing it for a few years. He's involved in a wide range of activities, which I'm going to let them, if I had it here, it would really take too much space, as would each of everyone's. And he works at Mass as well, Mass Advocate Standing Strong. So that's our panel. I'm going to stop the share so you can see our panel. And I'm going to hand the ball to you, Linda, and let you start. And once in a while, I might jump in on her to ask her a question, but we really want, you guys to hear all the presentations and then questions and answers at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. As you said, my son Ryan is 23. He was a student, a DESE student, which entitled him to have more supports because he needed them. He needed one-on-one support, and he had issues with communication and things like that. He did age out. He turned 22 in August of 2020. So our biggest barrier at that time was COVID, while transitioning into adult services. However, we did run into an issue where we were approached by DDS before then. We were approached in June with a budget, a very low budget. So it was a little confusing for us. We didn't understand why that was happening. And so we weren't ready. We weren't ready to transition at that time. Ryan had just lost his program in March of 2020. So we didn't know if he was going to be going back. We didn't know, like everyone else, what was going on with COVID. So we weren't ready to accept that budget. We didn't have any plans in place. We didn't know what he was going to be doing at that time. But anyway, Ryan's life vision is to be happy living and participating in his community, doing the things that he enjoys. So we wanted to set up an individualized budget, much like he had on the DESE program, where he could do the things that he was skilled in and that he still enjoyed at. And that was the best way to make him successful and have his life fulfilled. But the budget that they were giving us wasn't going to accommodate for things like that. So when he did age
Linda,
out,
can I
Sure.
ask you, just to give people, just so they get a sense of low, is under $20,000 the budget for the year, or?
at that time, yeah, it was prorated
Okay,
for us. When he did turn 22 in August, it was prorated because the budget, as you know, comes out in July. So
so it was a budget from August on or September on? Is that what it
Yes.
was? Okay, thank you.
yes.
And again, just so people know, when you say low, he's a DESE student and he's getting somewhere around under $20,000 for 10 or 11 months of the year. Okay.
Correct, yes. So we wanted to try and build on some of the things that he was doing in his transition program at school that he was, successful at, whereas Ryan likes to cook. So he had a job with a job coach in his transition program, and he would go to work at a hospital in the cafeteria, and he would fill their condiments and things like that. And he would also fill their a la carte selections and things like that. But he would also work in the school cafeteria, and he would cook lunch. He would help cook lunch and things like that there. So he would always love to cook. So we were hoping to individualize his home program in adult services by hiring a job coach and continue that on as well, because having a job was very important to him. He liked to work. He also volunteered at Meals on Wheels while he was there. So, and doing that was also something that he enjoyed. He's also a musician, and music is very important to him in his life. It always has been since he was small. So he enjoys taking music lessons and learning more instruments as he goes along, and singing. So he's always been doing that, taking music lessons, vocal lessons, things like that. So we want to incorporate that, of course, into his program. He's always active in his community, Special Olympics, sports, volleyball. He likes going out to eat in restaurants. Yoga, he's very into yoga, exercise. So there was many things that we had planned to do to keep going for him, because he's not a kid that likes to sit in the house and do nothing. He doesn't watch TV. He's never on the computer. He doesn't do any of those things. He needs to be active. And it just wasn't possible with the budget that we had. So, we didn't want that budget, and we were hoping it was going to change. And unfortunately, we still have that budget today. So it's an issue.
Okay, so your goal was really to keep the multiple experiences that he was having. They were making a difference for him.
Yeah.
The COVID piece, I'm sure, affected the DDS end of it too, in terms of having the time and focus with you and Ryan. But on the flip side, what it also meant, the additional barrier was figuring out how to do what you wanted to do. Why was the money, how did they get to that number, in terms of the dollar amount, right, in the first place? There wasn't room, sounds like you're saying, to negotiate around it. So, what could be achieved? What are the resources? Those kinds of things. And that's a big deal for someone who's actually, and someone Kerry told everybody, that's Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed program that helps families stay together and helps avoid residential schools. You don't just get that allocation, and probably we should have explained that to people. It's unique, and there's also waiting lists for it. So more is needed, if anything, right? Any last things you want to comment on before we go to Cindy? You have more time. I'm not trying to rush you. Sorry.
Well, I just want to say, with the budget that we have, the average amount of hours that we can afford to pay someone, because we have to use a higher pay rate of a higher scale because of his needs. So, it has to be at least $20 an hour. So that only averages out to be about 15 hours a week for a direct support person. And that's just not going to do it. And we're having trouble even hiring somebody. We're looking. We had somebody, but that was just for a short term. And so it's me. It's been me for a while. So, you throw that into the mix, it's just really, really tough. And he's just has a lot of downtime, and it's not good. So, there's just not a lot that we can do with the self-direction right now.
And the only other thing I was curious about that I'd love for you for education purposes, for other people listening in case they have teenagers or they know people who are graduating. Usually, the practice was if somebody was in that SEDDS program, that they would be offered, like the residential piece was considered, but the amount of money you got, even if you got something prorated that included some one-on-one time, you'd be probably below 30,000 a year, just to put in perspective, right? Not under 20. But it doesn't appear like, obviously you don't have a priority one designation for residential. And was that explained to you why, or?
No, it wasn't. In fact, the last assessment he had done was at 18. It was the ICAP, and that had errors on it. Excuse me. And I brought forth the attention that there was errors on it, and nothing was done about that. So he never had another assessment after that, even after turning 22, and nobody was meeting because of COVID. So nothing was ever done about it.
So it's something, anyway, it's for people to appreciate the importance of, I don't know if you could have done anything during COVID different, honestly, Linda, because things were so quiet, and it was really a tough period. But it sounds like your situation just, you're still hoping to make it work. And I know we're going to be supportive of you to trying to get it to work for Ryan, to get kind of pace he needs and routine he needs. So thank you. Thanks for coming on and sharing. But you'll be available for questions from others here. So you're going to stick around, and I'm going to ask Cindy to go next.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cindy O'Connor. I have a 29-year-old son named Kevin who has autism, intellectual disabilities, has a lot of trouble communicating, and he has a seizure disorder. And he's 29 years old. I am helping him, pretty much doing most of it, but self-directing a day in residential program for him, which makes it a little unique. Just for background, Kevin attended public schools, he attended consortium programs. He ended up in an ABA program with a one-to-one. And it really didn't seem to matter wherever he was. Those programs sort of just weren't meeting his needs in the way they needed to be met, particularly around communication. As he got older, he got more frustrated, and, behaviors were starting, punitive measures are being used with him. And, by the time he turned 17, I was like, we're not getting anywhere here. He did better at home than in school, and that was sort of unusual. Most kids, I was hearing it was the reverse. And there was just a day when he turned 17 that I thought, maybe I'm just trying to force a program in the wrong setting. And so I wasn't really thinking about self-direction when we started this program. I'm not sure I even knew about it. I just knew that if I kept him in his program and we got to 22, I wasn't going to know anything about him. And I was going to be limited by what other people's perceptions were about what his abilities were. So, he was gone all day at school. He'd get home late in the afternoon. We'd have dinner. He didn't want to work at night. So I wasn't learning enough about him either. So at 17, I pulled him out of school and I homeschooled him for 2 years. I know that's not something anyone can do, but I just felt like that was necessary to put me in the position to be able to advocate for him when he turned 22. I didn't quite know what we were going to do. I didn't know what was going to work, but I knew that I had a communication approach that would work for him, and I needed to develop that if he was ever going to be away from us. So after about 2 years, I felt like he had made incredible progress, and I went back to the school system and said, you know, we need to now start carryover, but nothing was going to be in my home. I was no longer going to be a school. He wasn't going to go back to school because I wasn't training him to be a good student. I was now training him to be a good citizen. So, you know, after working with the school system, and I have to, you know, hand it to the special ed director. I know she was nervous to do this with us, but they funded an apartment for him in a nearby town to our home. And we just began.
Cindy, what municipality, just to give a shout out, since, you know.
Andover, Joyce Landre at the time. I think she's retired now, but I remember her saying to me, she was very fearful about it. And I was fearful, you know, it was a huge leap to leave school and try and do this. But, you know, I honestly didn't feel I had a choice. I'm not advocating this for everyone, but I didn't feel we had a choice with my son. He was coming home, going up to his room, getting under his cover. I mean, this is a kid like Linda's son who was just active, going all day. And I was just seeing the reverse, and I was afraid of what would happen. So anyway, we were able to explore the community and start working on his independent living skills. And I really had time to devote to that. And the communication system, which I just felt was so important for him. And so that's what he did at 19. He went to the apartment and we started building up the program. In the meantime, I was looking at day programs and residential programs because that was really my intention. Wasn't that we were going to do self-direction, but couldn't find anything that would meet his needs. Spoke with our transition coordinator at DDS and said, you know, where should we go? I wanted to stay around town because we had just made all these connections. And she said, if you can keep your program, keep it. So, you know, just she felt that was important. And I did too at that point. I didn't know how to make it happen, but just started talking with the area director, developing budgets. We got prioritized in the meantime so that there'd be a residential component. And so at 22, you know, I'm glossing over it, but at 22, we had a budget in place and we were able to continue to support Kevin in his apartment and extend more time there. We just recently got a Section 8 for him there. So, you know, I think we're a success story. We're in good position. It's a huge burden on the family. It's a very difficult thing to do, but I was somebody who, you know, even if I had free time, if my son wasn't happy, I wasn't happy. And so we just had to get him to a place where he could be happy. I have a lot of energy about thinking towards the future and what we can do to sustain some of these kinds of programs. So that's why I keep it in place. But it is an awful lot of work for families. And we do agency with choice. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but we have partnered with 2 different agencies over the past 12 years. It's been really difficult to find agencies willing to kind of go out on a limb and do this with us. But thankfully, there's a very good one that's right here in our area who thinks outside the box and was willing to support us. So that's where we are.
Great. Thank you. That was unbelievable summary, and you covered a lot in several minutes. Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
When it's question and answer time, think a little bit about how many hours a week. Like Linda's experience is different, where she's sort of covering so much. And I know sometimes you cover probably hours that aren't filled. In Linda's case, where it's so fresh, and the fact that she's on board so much, she probably can't give a honest assessment of how many hours because it's overwhelming. But if you could, when things are going smoothly, if you could think about it, and then during Q&A, you could tell people sort of, given the intensity, right, of what you're managing,
Sure.
how many hours a week that part of it takes. That would
Sure.
be great a little later. All right. Well, let me, Will and Liz, I think Will's going to do the initial presentation, Liz, right?
Yeah,
And then
I'm going to let him start because he's an amazing self-advocate, and then I'll play cleanup and kind of share the backstory of some of the things that Cindy and Linda talked about, answer any questions.
Okay. And I am going to share.
Will, is your microphone
Right.
off?
Will, here we go. We're going to get to the presentation. Of course, now I got to let me pull this stuff out of the way. This is the only problem when it's having.
Right.
Okay,
Will, before you
slideshow. Here we
start
go. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Before he does the slides, I think he wants to just share a little bit about why he uses self-direction and how he got here. Right, Will?
Yeah,
And then,
so
Leo, you can pull up the slides.
Afterwards. Okay, why don't you
Yep.
go ahead, Will?
so the reason I use self-direction is basically I hire my own people instead of having to go to a program, because I've tried programs before, but it hasn't really worked. For what I understand is when I was in Eileen A. Sarch's room, or my post-grad year at Needham, Eileen has really said to me, you should really start working and believe in what you do instead of having to do with the going to these programs and finding out it's the same. I found out the same thing with the program, the day program, which is Price Center, and basically what I realized was I didn't really need Price Center's help, because I already knew the insides and outs between learning about how to get a job, because I have already experienced that in my post-grad year. And I think it's fair to say that, I was more comfortable by just not doing a day program and just continue to work, because that's what I love to do.
So do you want Leo to pull up the slides and you can share all the
Yeah,
things
if you don't
do
mind, that would
with
be
your
good,
self-direction?
Leo, if you don't
Cool.
mind doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Here we go. Okay.
So I work at the Red Sox and Gillette Stadium, and I work for the Kraft family, as the Kraft group at Gillette. And then I have also did work with Mass Advocates, and I also work with Tom Brady, which I've had for almost 3 years now. I'm gonna be going in my 3rd year with him in September. So that's what I do for work. As a and what I do at home, I basically pick out the appropriate outfit for the weather and work. I help to do my own.
So we're talking about the people who do your self-direction, right, Will? Like Dan
Yeah.
and Diane?
So
This
Diane,
is about how they help you, right?
So this is how they help me, is that they come to my house and basically help me with my, sometimes it's challenging for my mom to come over every time. So I have staff that comes to my house to help me get ready for the day, or before I even go out to work and stuff like that. So basically what happens is we have this type of program where it's not like a day program, but it's basically I have people make my lunch for me, and I have people that help me decide what to wear, and I use basically pictures to realize, okay, what do I need to wear today? So I use that to be able to, I need help by doing my Social Security, and a lot of the different things is that I tend to, do it on my own, but I also need help for I need help to do the math and the skills to be able to do that.
Right.
Does
And
that
then
make
next
sense?
slide, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay,
Great, Will.
that's great. Will, you're doing a great job. Let's just, I guess I'll hit it like this. That's funny.
Maybe it was the first slide, Leo. I feel like
The first slide.
there was one.
Oh, my
that's very
goodness, I
good.
jumped right over that
Activities.
by accident. Thank you for being
Okay.
Yes.
on the
So,
ball.
activities. I exercise with the TB12 and for the TB12. I'm a sled hockey player. I do a program called Positively Goats, and I'm actually in a band myself through the Muse Foundation.
And
That's
you're
meant-
self-directed. People help you with these things, right? Well,
Yeah.
help you get
Yes.
there, or yep.
Yep.
So that Positively Goats, you want to just quickly tell us what the heck that sort of looks cool. What's going on there?
It's pretty cool. It's basically a program in Natick that is run by this person that we've known for how many years, Mom? I would say
We've known her
Years?
about 2 years. She was
2 years.
worked at Riverside as a counselor and started a therapeutic goat program.
Wow.
But then turned it into, she has an adult program now that's a little more education and social based, right? Well,
yeah.
and you use your DDS funds to pay for the program, right?
Yep. I
And to have someone accompany you there, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So that giving people a great example of the ranges of activities and
Yes.
and this is why obviously Kevin's doing it and Cindy's coordinating because of the range of activities he can do, and that's Linda's goal for Ryan as well. So that was great. Liz, what you want to add to the?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just what's relevant for people on the call to understand is Will, his last 2 years of his eligibility during school ended up moving out of our home into an affordable condo that he purchased through a lottery. That's a whole convoluted another story, but the last 2 years of his transition was working and doing a lot of things in the community. And similar to Cindy, I thought, okay, he's going to get his experience, and we had hoped to do a day program, but Will was not happy. We tried a couple, and I think he felt like it was a step backwards and really resisted. And DDS was willing to let us split, which was great, and maybe do 3 days of day program and 2 days of self-direction, which was what I hoped, because there'd be a social component, but it wasn't what Will wanted. And that was what was really important and what was going to make him happy. And he's become more independent. So we moved purely to self-direction. And it's a big time commitment for me, as Linda and Cindy have both referenced. We have, several people that I manage. I every day am involved. If someone can't take Will, I have to call the program, tell him he's not going to be there, or try to find someone else, or cancel what I was going to do to take him. There's definitely a management piece, but well worth it. And, definitely the sustainability of it makes me nervous. But I wouldn't change it for anything. I think the pros outweigh the cons for sure. And Will only has day funding through DDS, although we did appeal for residential. And he's now a priority 2, which means kind of that middle level doesn't get it now, but will if and when the time is needed. And we fund his residential through other ways, through PCA funding. But his funding from DDS is a little more than a traditional day program for what you've seen that he's able to do. And we had to advocate and appeal for that. But DDS has been great and supportive of Will's programming. And I don't know if you saw, he works for Mass Advocates Standing Strong, and he's a self-advocate there, which is a really neat position for him.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Will and Liz, too. Great job. And really something. Okay, now let's open it up for questions. Anybody want to, either through the chat or just ask a question? Obviously, you heard 3 different stories. You didn't hear all the trials and tribulation of the stories. It's not a easy path. I think the regional managers said that as well. I know we're hoping it'll get easier over the next few years. That's our dream and hope, and I know the department feels that way too. So Diane said, appreciate these stories. Anybody have questions, nitty-gritty questions, or or want to shed their reaction? Okay, oh, Cynthia said, how many hours a week of direct care support? Linda said 15 hours, yeah. I don't think she said 15 hours. I think it's 15 hours of support is what you can afford based on the rate, but you need more than that, right? In terms of what Ryan needs, correct, Linda? Okay. And Cindy, I wanted to ask you how many hours to manage it, okay, in a given average week, not on a horror week, but on an average week, what do you think realistically?
When we're fully staffed, it's pretty manageable, but I could never work a job and do this outside of it. I mean, I think that says it all. You're on call 24/7. There's no backup help anywhere. So we're always on call for any questions that staff might have, for, agencies calling, if you're involved with Agency with Choice, for DDS question, there's just a lot coming all the time. And, when Kevin's gone, I'm drawing up next week's schedule or getting work together that he'll be able to do. And it's very seasonal. So I couldn't even say how many hours. I do feel like I'm doing it all the time. I can't even give you a ballpark. And that's even on weekends, because I'm over there, after staff's gone, I'm over there getting the apartment ready for the next week, or cleaning the apartment, or, I don't use the funds to do those kinds of things. I'm using it most just for staff and the activities that Kevin's involved in. So, keeping the groceries there, keeping, making sure everything's all set for the next week, having a schedule in place that everybody's aware of, making sure all the communication materials are in place if they've got misplaced. And so it's a lot of work. It's like being a house manager for one person, but you have just all those same responsibilities. Kevin has a one-to-one. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but so there's a lot. If they don't show, I'm the backup too. So it's hard, like Liz was saying, I can't even have a doctor's appointment that you can count on being able to get to, because there could be a last-minute call out. And I think that's really hard. But that having been said, for the money we spend, we don't have comparable money to what it would be if we were in a traditional program. But I think it's money so well spent. It's such a rich life that he has, with that same money.
One of the questions that relates to Cynthia's question is sort of, it's asking in a different way from Diane. How did you come up with your budget? So I'm going to ask Liz, you want to take that, and then Cindy, why don't you take that one as well when you came up with the budget?
I mean, we advocated, we were trying to get residential and came back from it. So
let me ask you in a different way. I'm sorry. Sorry to cut you off. I want to make sure how do you figure out what you need when you do make the ask? Like, what did you do? What did you sit down and look at to figure out?
Yeah. I mean, I started with, how much do I need to pay people? How much for the type of person I need, who I feel can work with William and understand him and feel safe, and which is higher than the regular rate. So I started with that and then worked backwards. So we pay anywhere from $22 to $25 an hour. So that eats away a big piece of the budget. We do per PDP, so we're not paying any fees through Agency with Choice, which takes away a little bigger chunk. Someone said to me, if you just want roast beef, why get the sandwich? So I like that analogy.
Mom, can I add something?
Yes, well.
I was supposed to say that I was supposed to get residential from Cotting, which Cotting School is the school that I've been at for 7 years. But I also knew that, if I was going to live in Lexington, it would be kind of further away where my mom is. And I think that, it's a great school, but it was like they weren't really doing anything with the Hope House. And I think
it didn't open, right? Well,
it didn't open. Never opened. So it was kind of hard. It was kind of hard to like
car and computer.
Let me explain about the budget too, well, because you know how we spend the money, right? And everybody, so he has right now, so we took the money and then I figured, okay, if we're gonna have to pay people anywhere in that range, how many hours does that work out to? And then look at the activities and what are the priorities and what are the things that I can do and what things I can't, because I still do a lot, all the medical appointments, all the food shopping. Occasionally he'll go pick up food with his helpers. But I check in and manage his home and do his work schedule. I do all of that, communicate with his employers, make sure they're on his calendar because all of that's hard. So every day I'm doing something, but I can go away for a few days and Will can be okay. He's got about 6 people right now on his PDP payroll that we tap into. But the budget piece was much more a function of what can we, here's our budget. Here's the rate we need to pay people, the range. How many hours does that equate to? And then what are the activities that he needs help with? And what things can he do independently? And Will can be alone, which makes a big difference for this type of program.
Yes. Huge.
Right? Yep.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. And Cindy, do you want to add? And there's a side question from Cheryl related to that. Do you use medical or behavioral supports as part of your budget as well, or does I don't know if insurance pays for that, but or Mass Health? But Cindy, and your approach to setting the budget.
Yeah, well, during Kevin's school years, we once he came out of school, I homeschooled him for 2 years and wasn't taking any money from anybody. Then when he went at 19 and we went back and got the apartment and all that, we figured his budget based on whatever it would have cost for a one-on-one at the school he was attending. So we just used that money. So he was at an ABA program. What did that program cost when you had the one-to-one? And that's what we used for the money. I was also given some compensatory money for the 2 years that I had him home.
Oh, wow.
So that was our budget during the school years. And then I had no idea really how to set it up. We had something in place because I had worked with a transition coordinator during his school year. So, we had already started paying staff and knew what costs were going to be, but I didn't really know how it worked in adult services. We had a great area director who really assisted me with that. I probably had to go through 5 or 6 budgets. And the funny thing is you draw up a budget and nobody would comment on it. Nobody would say anything. And so then I draw up another one. And so eventually we got to it, but they were helpful in helping me know I needed to add MAP costs, medication administration program costs, and to work in transportation and telling me what that might cost. And so people helped me, but like Liz, you start with what are you going to pay people? And we were paying people $20 an hour, and at the time, sometimes the rent is up to $24 an hour. So so it just started with that. Then every day I figured we were going to have recreation for him every day. He was going to try to have some kind of job every day. And sometimes that required some adaptive equipment for his job. He was going to be doing ADLs and meal prep and all of that every day. So just kind of trying to average those costs up and put something together. We were far below what, we were told when we started. I just had no idea. I asked families weren't willing to share what they were making, and I understand that. But finally, the area director said, if you have a one-to-one in a day program, that's around $58,000. And if you're in a residential program with someone with your son's challenges, that can be $150,000 plus. So I had sort of this ceiling, and we were way under that. But that did help me to sort of understand where I was in the.
Your area director was very, responsive to you, which is so important. When DDS, I always say you have to connect with those staff that are there, that are willing to be responsive. It's never going to be perfect because life isn't perfect, but that's such a great example of you getting those answers, right? Yeah. And let me let Linda say a few things.
After listening to both Liz and Cindy, I just wanted to make a comment that my son Ryan was also in an ABA school during his last transition years. And I too wanted to incorporate a medical professional because he needed that support, ABA. And I was told that I needed to access my insurance for that. But unfortunately, when you have an insurance company that, you have to exhaust your deductible first before any of that is covered. So that wasn't an option for us. So, again, with the low budget that we have, that's not an option.
Right, right.
So, I mean, to just sit there and calculate your budget the way that the way that Cindy and Liz have been fortunate enough to be able to do is never an option for me.
Well, hopefully it will be in the near future. Okay, hopefully it will be. And Teresa, I'm going to pick you in a second. I see your hands raised, but I want to add something. We always encourage people to use the PCA program, and Liz mentioned the PCA program, but there is a built-in dilemma. You have to figure out, how do you figure out a way legally to compensate those people getting PCA funded? Because you can't just say, I'm going to pay you $3 more an hour if you work for Will or if you work for Ryan or Kevin. Okay. You have to figure out, and one of the things we suggest is giving them another quote unquote job to do for a few hours a week. That's $30 an hour or something like that. And basically what you end up doing is you make it worthwhile. You link it, maybe it's called coordinator, maybe it's whatever, but it's not being a PCA for those 3 hours, if you get my drift. And I'm sure you guys have had to figure those up, because that's something that folks are going to expect. The DDS are never going to give you, equivalent. But again, we could argue about the equivalency. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I'm just saying that's a dilemma that I appreciate that people face when they actually try to do that versus, the goal of doing that. So Teresa, I'm going to let you finally get some satisfaction. You've had your hand raised for a while.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Thank you. So I'm right behind you guys. And I am so fortunate to hear these stories because it's taught me what I need to work on and everything. My son is 20 years old. I've been homeschooling him this year because school, he's had it. He graduated, he's had it, they're not meeting his needs. And we're already looking, he's approved by DDS. So we're going to be deciding, he's going to take this program at a local college through Community Autism Resources for the next couple of years, most likely. But after that, we kind of need to determine what he's going to do. And I actually have two questions. So my son works very part-time at McDonald's. He does have a job coach, sort of, through an agency, through DDS, I believe. And we're in the process right now of probably hiring like a therapeutic mentor for him. And I was probably going to use his own money because he can't have over $2,000 in assets anyway. And I wondered if anybody else ever did that, especially Will, because Will has a job. And then the other question I had is, my biggest problem, it seems like, is the managing. I totally get it. I have a part-time job, and managing his services and finances and education is a full-time job. It's just incredible. It's something I'd like to avoid in the future. So the types of services, like if he was in a situation with Will they teach our guys stuff that they need to know? Like Will said, his support staff will come in and make him lunch. Does Will want to learn to make lunch? That's what I have a hard time with. The support people that I've just had experience with just seem to want to do everything for him instead of teaching him.
Okay, great. Start with that one first. That's a great point. Any quick response to that, because we're at 12:46, but go ahead. Yeah, Liz.
I'm happy to jump on because this all resonated with me, Teresa. So as far as the making lunch example, it was a learning experience, which is why I believe transition real life experiences are so critical, that it's really hard for kids to generalize. So Will was out, he was in his condo, and we learned what became easy for him to do independently and what was harder. I mean, Will is in a wheelchair too, right? Well, and
Yeah.
it's hard for him to stand for a long period of time, and it gets exhausting. So there are, when he's home alone, he knows how to put together certain things. But when it's 8 a.m. and you got to get out by 9 and there's 10 other things to do, it's easier for his support person, with Will's direction. Yes, I'd like to have the iced tea. I want an orange, and my chicken from last night is in the fridge. So it's a learning process. And as far as work goes, That's a really tricky one. We technically do not use Will's DDS support for employment. His self-directed people help him get to work, help him manage his work. But Will can work without a job coach. He uses MRC funds, which is another resource. You can use multiple agencies. And we have ongoing support with MRC. So he has a job coach come once a week for 1 hour, which is unusual to be able to get for a long period of time. The concept of MRC is in and out. So you really have to know if your child is going to need ongoing constant support at work, that's going to eat away most of their budget for self-direction. And maybe working a lot of hours during the week isn't a reality. Maybe group supported employment through a program is a better model. Like there's agencies that have groups that will go to a place and work together. So if your child is, in transition, I highly stress competitive employment. I can't be, Eileen A. Sark.
If I can interrupt,
No,
I
so
think
Teresa,
he
I've got
could.
I've got to sort of almost close. I'm going to let Linda say one thing
Okay.
on the therapeutic monitor thing. I don't think that's an issue. I also want to point out there'll always be things. The average person is still going to have support needs in the unit. There's a continuum of capabilities and abilities and growth. Of course, there's always growth, hopefully, but so you're always going to have that tension, and you are going to need to have a manager. You might get lucky and be able to pay someone to be that manager at some point, but just to put a closure on that. And then Linda, why don't you be the last? I want to point out Lucy Chansky's statement, which is she doesn't use self-direction. She appreciates the amount of time, but she says there's at least 10 hours a week of stuff she oversees or manages, even though he's in a group home, because she wants him the kind of life that you all want to have for your, I think it's all sons, right, today. Yeah. So, and that's really, Cindy, you alluded to that, Linda, and Liz and Will, you all alluded to that. So Linda, you got the last thing, and we're going to thank everybody for being with us today, and see them next week. It's going to be from the inside, special education. So go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly answer her question about using your own funds. My son is in that community autism resources program, and he's only there because there's nothing else for him right now. It's not really an appropriate program for him, but DDS does pay for it. However, they will not pay for someone, a one-on-one or anybody to accompany with him, and he does need someone. So I do have to pay out of pocket for that.
Okay. All right. So more to come. I think we could do a whole other webinar on this. I think we should, with more Q&A. So let's, maybe a month if you guys want to come back, or if you want to break, we can invite someone else. But we really hearing more nitty gritty. We never really heard some of the specific things Kevin does. Linda, we'll want to get an update on your situation, and hoping that you will follow up and go up the food chain, please, to ask about the allocation and stuff. And everybody, I want to I think Jean Benoit was with us for a while, and Eileen A. Sarch was with us, which we didn't do a shout out to her. I happen to know Eileen because we did a transition project with the Needham Schools, was one of them. So great. She worked with Will and Liz. So everybody, Cindy, wonderful, great job. Linda and Liz and Will, really appreciated you guys putting yourselves out there. And thank you all for your participation and stuff. Wish we had more time.
Thank
Have
you.
a great.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leo.
I know.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Leah.